it's Mark Bossert. We're here with Bernie Pollock, and we're doing the Car Truth podcast. And of course, today we're going to talk about VW and electrics. What the hell is going on with VW, Bernie?
Well, VW is taking on electric cars in a big way, and I know we're going to talk about why they've done so. I mean, every manufacturer is taking on electric cars. It's the future and the direction that cars are going. VW seems to be taking it on even bigger than a lot of other manufacturers.
So, of course, VW, as an owner, a former owner, I will shamefacedly say, for 10 years, I drove a VW diesel. It was a great car, gave me great mileage, and then I found out it was a polluting, lying POC.
Yeah.
Being politically correct. So that's kind of the history of VW. What happened around Dieselgate?
Well, I think, VW put a lot of stake with diesel. I mean, they invested a lot in diesel. It was kind of it wasn't their exclusive motor, and they had lots of gasoline engine cars, but diesel was their sort of big area of expertise and innovation. And of course, as we know, they lied about the emissions. I have to say, they're still good engines. They're still a whole lot cleaner than every generation was cleaner. They just weren't what they said they were. And of course, that got them into a lot of trouble financially and ethically as a company. They, as you said, you bought the car and they lied, and that, I know for you that was a annoying thing to go through. So Volkswagen is, took on, what do we do next? As part, and some of this may have been legislated, and a lot of it may have been smart thinking. They've taken on electric cars as the way of the future, and been innovative and come across with some pretty amazing things.
So they're moving basically into an all-electric lineup in a fairly short period of time. They've really pushed hard to show what they've got coming very soon. In fact, perhaps even this year in 2019, for sure in 2020, the first ones will come out. But what they already have electric cars. What do they have there? They have a bit of history there as well.
Yeah, Volkswagen has a bit of history. So I did a little research, and so Volkswagen electric cars actually go back to 1970 when they took on a project of electrifying a Volkswagen bus. It's got some interesting specs. I'm just going to reach over and read something. Top speed 70 kilometers an hour, range 70 kilometers. These are not very fantastic specs. Charging time 10 hours. That's 220 volts in Europe. And interestingly enough, the weight of the vehicle. So a Volkswagen bus back in 1970 weighed less than 3,000 pounds. This vehicle weighed 6,600 pounds, 3,000 kilos. So the batteries in the electric motor were just incredibly heavy for the time. So that's probably one reason it never really caught on. But one of the reasons they took on doing electrification was they figured that by 1990, the world's oil reserves would run out. So we're a little off the mark with that. And I don't know where it was decided that there was more oil, because if that was really the case, I think they would have spent a lot more energy on it. But for some reason, I guess we figured we had more, and we keep finding more, unfortunately, for the CO2 emissions for our planet. But they also built a Golf, which looks more like a Rabbit that we're used to in North America. But they built that about 5 years later and had that running around for a little while. But none of these vehicles ever went into production. They were just experimental.
And then today, for the last few years, for sure, they've since at least 2014, 15, I believe, they've had an e-Golf, which is basically, like you said, the Rabbit / Golf platform. But how are those vehicles?
Well, they're again, so the e-Golf is basically a converted, Golf. Instead of having an internal combustion engine and the usual transmission, they've put an electric motor, removed the gas tank, put in batteries, and fitted everything into the sort of conventional car platform. And these are kind of neat cars to drive. I mean, they have decent performance. They're not like, Tesla knock you back in your seat sort of performance, but it's decent city performance. but the range is very limited. Like the 2015s, I think the range is 130 kilometers, which is really, it's like 70 miles. It's really not much. I mean, it really makes it a city vehicle. And even the newest versions of that vehicle are only about 200 kilometers or 123 miles. So it's not a very practical vehicle if you want to travel long distances. But, it's kind of a zippy little vehicle. We've done some service on a couple of them. They're, I mean, nothing, again, with the electric really goes wrong, but, it's like a nice little zippy vehicle, but, definitely lacking in terms of what's available, like, and comparable, like a Nissan Leaf or, which is another sort of economical branded electric car.
Yeah, and the e-Golfs, we were just looking online, and I know I've test driven a 2019 e-Golf. They are, for only 123 horsepower, they have quite a bit of torque. They're very comparable to a GTI, kind of off the line, 0 to 60 kind of performance. But again, very little range, but also expensive in comparison for that little range. In my book, anyways, they were 36, starting at about 36,000 and easily up to $45,000
in Canadian dollars.
In Canadian dollars, yes, and because we're in Canada, but a 12 to 18 month wait to get one. Believe it or not, even with those limits, there's that much demand for electric vehicles in Canada. And that's pretty amazing to me. 12 to 18 months.
Yeah. It is. As you said, it shows the demand for these vehicles.
Volkswagen, I guess, next is moving into a whole new chapter. What do they got coming?
So they have the MEB platform, and this is really cool. This is like a completely redesigned vehicle. It's as you said, it's like a skateboard kind of platform where they put the batteries as basically part of the floor pan of the vehicle, and then there's the electric motors at each end of the vehicle. So this vehicle is completely designed around the electric platform and optimized, and then you can just put whatever body on top of that. Of course, they could beef up the batteries or the motors depending on the specifications if you want to have a more high performance. I don't know if they're actually doing that or whether they're just coming out with one sort of horsepower platform for everything, but that's an option that they could do. But this is where things change, and it's going to make these cars really, really exciting.
And so they have some pretty amazing products. And I got to say, I've gone from being a bit of a VW hater, to be honest, even though they gave me a lot of money for my diesel when I gave it back to them, as that was part of their legislated mea culpa, make good, was that they had to pay people to return their vehicles. And I'm not sure that, I think a lot of them are being resold, to be honest. So it's not like they were taken off the road. They just took a hit, but they also had to put in a huge charging network in Europe and North America. They've committed billions of dollars to this. We were just reading that they've committed $48 billion to battery technology research over the next few years. So they're investing a tremendous amount of money and coming out with a whole new platform in a really short period of time, kind of going from backwards or at the same level, if we could be kind, as the rest of the generally conventional auto manufacturing world, to being the leaders. Because this whole ID series, and we'll have links in the show notes to videos about these next upcoming vehicles, are pretty exciting, to be honest. What do you think?
I love that. I love that bus. I mean, that is if you take a look at that, I mean, this is like, that's the coolest thing.
The ID Buzz is definitely something I would definitely look seriously at buying one of those. The ID3 is the first one that's coming out. It's kind of similar to the 2019's current generation or 2018's current generation of the VW Beetle. The stylized, kind of modernized looking Beetle. It's sort of similar to that, but it's all electric, and it has tremendous amount of really cool features that are only really possible in electric cars. or with LED systems, the way that they light the car up, and very good specs. Of course, they're just concept cars at this point, but they're coming this year or
Well, I'd say they must be
next year.
beyond concept if they're actually coming out. They're actually in production if they're coming out.
Yeah. So, and up to 300 miles of range, 400 kilometers, which that's very usable. That's a vehicle that you could actually take on a trip with the way that charging stations are, as we mentioned in our last podcast, charging stations are arriving rapidly. Every day there's more charging stations, and we can literally point to that. There is, in fact, every day in North America, and certainly I'm sure in Europe, that every day there's a new charging station going up somewhere, whether it's in a public place or a city hall or a parking spot somewhere.
Well, as mentioned to you, I even saw a drive-in on a drive down to Seattle down the I-5. There's a drive-in in a sort of mid-sized town, Burlington, and it says, it's a drive-in. It says, free electric car charging, and I'm going, that is a brilliant business strategy. Like, for how long it's going to last, when things change. But right now, that's a great thing. I mean, they'll get a lot of electric vehicle customers needing to charge their cars, and hey, why not, sit and have a drive-in lunch or dinner at the same time. It's kind of bringing back the drive-in for whatever limited time, but however long. I thought that was a pretty cool idea. So charging stations, you never know where they're going to pop up.
So what Volkswagen's got planned is, of course, the sort of the economy or the smaller econo version, the ID3. And then in the next few years, there's the Vision is sort of analogous to the what's the biggest Volkswagen right now? It's not the Jetta. What's the one that's bigger than that? I forget.
Jetta, Golf, Passat.
Passat. So
Passat,
the Vision is sort of on the Passat kind of comparable. There's an ID Cross, which is their sort of version of a crossover SUV sort of vehicle, and then of course the ID Buzz, which we mentioned earlier, which is a Volkswagen bus. It's super cool looking. It's kind of the next generation of the surfer bus, kind of lowered, chopped and channeled looking, cool looking thing.
Yeah.
I
think they'll sell a lot of those. They're just so cool for style.
Yeah, they're definitely. Well, it's just something that you could drive around town and not feel guilty about, and do something good for the environment and for your pocketbook at the same time.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's a pretty amazing thing. I have to tip of the old lid to Volkswagen for being able to turn it around from being, big polluters to really jumping full bore. And I think it to me, honestly, it's an illustration of this is not something that car companies have gotten kind of used to being able to just be really incremental and taking a long time to make changes. And we don't have that time anymore. We don't have that time environmentally. We don't have that time probably market-wise. The companies that kind of jump in and make massive investments in really doing something different and charging into this new world of electrics are going to be the winners. And the ones that don't, as we can see from Tesla, how much they've completely disrupted. I'm sure there was guys sitting in the boardroom at, smoking a cigar in Detroit going, these guys ain't going to do nothing. Yeah. And they've crushed it. I mean,
and it's really only those people with completely innovative technologies that are ever going to make the difference, because everyone else, like you said, car companies, they're going to play it safe and add, car companies always whine and complain the moment it's like, look, you need to put seat belts in these cars. They go, it's going to be too expensive. No one's going to buy our cars and blah, blah. Like you just look at some of these things and you go like, just put the bloody thing, if it was left to the car companies, you'd still probably be driving 1950s style, vehicles, and mostly, I don't know. It's kind of crazy.
Well, they might be atomically powered,
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, exactly.
which would be okay too.
Yeah. Less tailpipe pollution, but you really have to have a very contained system for collisions. You have to be able to throw it off a cliff and the reactor would have to stay intact.
Yeah.
And probably weigh a lot more than that VW bus at 3,000 kilos, having that reactor contained.
So in the midst of this exciting time, VW's moved from stodgy old German kind of people's car makers to leaders in the industry.
Yeah.
And VW is a massive, massive company. They're the biggest car seller in the world. They own Skoda, they own Seat, they own Audi, they own Porsche, they own Lamborghini. They're a pretty big company. So
there's probably a couple other brands we haven't.
That we missed in there,
yeah.
or they have partial investments in.
Yeah.
And they're for them to jump in this deep, they were forced to, but they've also kudos to them for jumping in this deep, because the new vehicles coming are very exciting.
I agree.
Sure.
It's an exciting future.
Thanks, Bernie.
Thanks, Mark.